Again, good morning. You all are behaving so well. Everyone's quiet. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Brian Steed. I'm the Executive Director of the Quinney Lawson Institute for Land, Water, and Air at Utah State University. I'm grateful to see so many of you here today. Just 1 year ago, I was actually attending an event very similar to this, but I was attending as a participant and not in the role that I'm currently at. And it's been a phenomenal year. For the last 5 months, I've had the pleasure to serve as the first director of the Quinney Lawson Institute for Land, Water, and Air at Utah State University. And I am so humbled by the opportunity and so excited to be here with you today. We're joined with many dignitaries today. I probably will miss some, so I apologize. But want to acknowledge the governor, Spencer Cox is here, as well as President Noel Cockett from the university. Also, various members of the Utah State Legislature, Senator Winterton, Representative Chu, Representative Benyon, Representative Briscoe, and probably others that I just can't see. And especially want to welcome members of the Quinney Lawson Foundation, including Peter Lawson, Ellen Rossi, Herb Lipsey, and Charles Lipsey. Thank you so much for being here. We have other dignitaries as well. We have at least 2 members of Utah State University's Board of Trustees, as well as various deans and important people, more important than I am. But I'm grateful that we could bring you out today. Today's the culmination of many great efforts. We appreciate the vision of the legislature, which in 2001 wrote a concurrent resolution supporting the creation of the Institute. We're very grateful for the investment of the Quinney Lawson Foundation, who have funded this endeavor and who have been such great allies and colleagues in what we're trying to do here. We're especially grateful to the governor as well, who has backed these efforts from the get-go. We're living in a really interesting time in the state. We're experiencing unprecedented population growth at the same time as we're experiencing very real resource constraints, and it makes for a challenging policy environment. At its heart, the Institute for Land, Water, and Air is set up specifically to deal with those challenges and to provide policymakers with the best information available so that they can make the informed decisions on how best to deal with those challenges. And that's really what brings us here today. As part of the concurrent resolution that set this up, we were mandated to create a report to the governor and legislature on a yearly basis. This is our 2nd annual of such endeavors, and are truly grateful for all the many individuals who have participated in making this a reality. So let's get right into it. We have President Noel Cockett here. I'm going to turn some time to her. And it's no understatement that we would not be here today without the President's vision at promoting Utah State University's experience in land, water, and air. And she had the inspiration really to make this institute a reality. Please join me in welcoming her.
Thanks, everyone. It is so great to be here and see many familiar faces, but what's really exciting is I'm seeing many new faces as well. And I think that's an indication of the attention that our institute is getting. On behalf of Utah State, Utah's land-grant university, I'm pleased to present today the 2022 report on land, water, and air. Over my 30-plus years at Utah State, I've been deeply committed to Utah State's land-grant mission. Before I was president, I served as Dean of the College of Agriculture, Director of the Utah Agriculture Experiment Station, Vice President for Extension, and Provost on 2 different occasions. In each of these roles, I witnessed firsthand and across a myriad of different ways the types of service that a state-serving institution elevates the education and the life of Utahns. I've never doubted the critical role that land-grant institutions provide to the states that they serve, and their distinct differences from other colleges and universities who deliver higher education, such as the 15 public institutions and 2 privates that we have here in Utah. More than 150 years ago, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Morrill Act that establishes a land-grant university in each state. These universities, including Utah State, have a federal mandate to offer college education to all citizens of the state, while also providing state-of-the-art research that benefits the state and delivering non-credit programs that improve the lives of individuals, families, and communities. Combining education, research, and outreach, that creates a powerful formula that has continued to lift this country across multiple generations. A century ago, the country's land-grant institutions were focused on agriculture and the mechanical arts, which at that time were the major industries of the country. As the needs of our country and the world have broadened, so has USU's expertise and the education and research programs that we deliver. But even with the expansion of our mission, we've always maintained unmatched excellence in the applied sciences. We are the state's scientists and educators who focus on knowledge that addresses the needs and issues of the state. We fulfill our land-grant mission through our top-tier R1 designation in research, our expansion of statewide campus education, our century-old extension program, and now through the Janet Quinney Lawson Institute for Land, Water, and Air that we're celebrating here today. I will end my term as president next year. Although I'll be moving on to new directions, I view the Janet Quinney Lawson Institute for Land, Water, and Air as one of my greatest legacies. The Institute embodies USU's land-grant mission. We designed it to be the state's institute. One of our board members commented that the Institute should be seen as the red telephone for our state leaders to call when they have an issue or a question about Utah's shared natural resources. Through USU's land, water, and air resource, we are creating new models for managing wildfire, in some cases burning more than less. We're establishing how the state's water use is impacted through available water supply from the Colorado River. We're identifying our next air quality threats in ammonia and ozone, even as we are making strides on PM 2.5. We're developing and testing straightforward ways for farmers to optimize and save substantial amounts of irrigation water. And we are collaborating with state partners to create solutions for the decreasing water level in the Great Salt Lake. These solutions are critical for Utah State's continued prosperity, but also critical for the quality of life of all Utahns. Although the creation of an Institute for Land, Water, and Air has been one of my priorities, the lifting of this institute has involved the efforts of many. I want to express my thanks to the Janet Quinney Lawson Foundation. We're represented right here at this table. USU's had this great partnership with the foundation for many decades. The foundation quickly saw the potential and the need for the institute and took critical first steps to create financial support for the institute that will ensure its operations for decades. I want to give a thank you to the Institute leadership's team and staff who, under Brian's leadership and direction, are expanding the partnerships and the projects that we do. I want to also thank the Institute's engaged advisory board and dozens of state and community partners who are guiding and informing the Institute's direction. Most importantly, I want to thank our USU faculty, staff, and students who provide the critical findings and expertise that help us know more so we can be better. 37 authors contributed to this year's report, sharing 26 of the most important and timely topics related to land, water, and air in Utah. That's a lot of expertise, but it's just an example of the 140 USU faculty members who actively engage in land, water, and air research. I'm pleased now to invite Governor Spencer Cox to come up, as well as Brian, so that we can present the governor with the 2022 report on land, water, air. Governor, okay, just a sec. I have some comments to talk about Governor Cox. Governor Cox has been a longtime advocate for advancing USU's land, water, and air research, and we're grateful for this leadership in these areas. And somehow, he already got his report.
He just gave it to me.
All right, well, let's thank the governor.
So we're just maximizing the awkwardness. Thank you so much. So now that you have the report, let's talk about what's in the report. And I have a brief presentation to run over the highlights, as well as some of the things that we think are most prescient of today's world. So 3 takeaway messages. Number 1, Utah is experiencing different conditions. Number 2, people's actions make a huge difference. And number 3, research helps inform policy choices. So that's the takeaway. Lots of good information throughout this. There are 5 chapters, 1 dealing specifically with land, 1 with water, 1 with air, 1 that's specifically on agriculture because it's really a cross-cutting issue across all of those issues, as well as 1 on the Great Salt Lake that deals specifically with all those cross-cutting issues as well. So, why do we care? So when I say that Utah is experiencing change conditions, I think it goes without saying that many of us who have lived here for some time see a different landscape when we're out there. This is a graph showing acres of farmland since 1975 compared to the yellow line is number of farms. Interestingly, we're seeing the subdivision of larger farms into smaller farms, and we're seeing the loss of agricultural lands generally. That's very different than the historical norms that we saw in the state over time. Similarly, we see some changing conditions when we look at January through March precipitation, 1950 to 2021. We specifically focused on, or the experts focused on, the months of January, February, and March because this is the largest amount of precipitation we get and the most important for snowpack. You're seeing a slight decline in that time frame. Maybe more alarmingly, we see in that same time frame a higher temperature, and what that means is, interestingly, we end up with more rain than snow. That's a very different world than what we were developed around because we developed large reservoir systems that were based on maximizing the capacity of capturing that runoff. And if that's changing over time, it's something that we should all be aware of because we may have to change practices as a result of those changed conditions. Additionally, those conditions have impacted not just things that are abstract, but indeed we can show that annual elevations of the Great Salt Lake are reaching, are at the lowest level in recorded history, and that's really alarming considering that we have, many of us have lived through the contemporary high and are now at the record low. In addition to that, we have forage production in rangelands in the state that are also impacted by this. So this is not just an urban problem, this is also a very rural problem and impacts how we do business both in the urban and rural landscapes. So, turns out we're not alone also in experiencing that concern. If we look at surveys, and this is a recent survey done from Utah State University, it shows that of the top issues that cities and people in cities were experiencing, water supply, air quality, access to public land, recreation opportunities, access to food quality, climate change, in addition to others that are also related to land, water, and air, affordable housing, and roads and transportation, all of which have risen to the top of what people care about. And so this is the work of Quinney Flynn at Utah State. It's cool stuff. We show that people care. So let's talk about land specifically. We have found ourselves in a really unique position here in the Western United States. As I mentioned at the outset, people's choices can make a difference. And we have noticed that as we, for the last 100 years, said fire's bad and tried to stop wildfire from spreading, we have actually ended up changing the conditions of the land. And those changed conditions of the land mean there's more fuel buildup. You combine that with a hotter, drier period of time, we end up with a tinderbox, and we're seeing much of the West in burn. And that's a problem for public lands and for every public land state like Utah, where we have between 63 and 67% of public lands here in the state. Now, interestingly though, that's not fait accompli. We don't have to say, well, we're all ruined because of this. Indeed, we have to be aware that the choices we make now will also make a difference on how we interact with those spaces. And so, citing the work of Patrick Beaumont and others, really active management now is really key to making sure that we are creating conditions on forests that aren't going to result in catastrophic burns. And that has huge dividends, because right now, if we don't do that active management, we have those catastrophic burns. Almost all of our watersheds, our catchment areas, are within areas that are forested. Those forested lands, when they burn, then when you have a rain event afterwards, you see what we see, debris flow generation, that ends up in our reservoirs. And in ending up in our reservoirs, then we have less capacity to store water in the future. It's kind of the trifecta of problems. But it's not fait accompli. If we engage in active management and do a little more, and right here we're advocating moderate and low severity burning, we actually can have then a condition to where when we have debris flow generation, it's by far less after those moderate burns than if you have severe burns. Similar would hold if we're talking mechanical treatments, but what we're saying is doing nothing is a problem. We need to do something in order to preserve the quality of life that we've got going on. Similarly, on land, we have an interesting, we have a great existence where we have lots of great things to come visit in the state. We have phenomenal national parks. We also have phenomenal state parks, both of which have been discovered, and especially post-COVID, it's interesting more people are visiting state parks. This is going to require planning and judgment on our parts on how we engage with that level of recreation. Agricultural production, I'll touch on briefly. It still remains an incredibly important part of rural economies, but they're facing pretty severe problems right now. That's from labor shortage, through input costs, as well as through land availability, especially in urbanizing areas. In addition to that, when areas urbanize, if you're doing something that's taken a while to grow, like an orchard, when you lose those orchards, that's not easily recoverable or easily moved. So we are actually seeing that just loss of agricultural production in the state. And that's interesting. Lastly, we see tremendous resource constraints on the water space in agriculture. And last but not least, economic minerals. We continue to be a very active state in mineral production. Interestingly, we're seeing changes over time on how that production's occurring. Right here you see the largest in terms of economic value is metals and industrial minerals. Even if we were to transition off of those bottom coal, natural gas, and crude oil, we would still expect to see a fair amount of mining activities in the state simply because we're super abundant on the critical minerals that are required in so many of the devices that we consider key, whether that's transitioning to clean energy or whether that's using your cell phone. And so we would expect, and actually last year, if you read the report, you'll see that we had a huge uptick last year in actual applications for permits to mine for many of those critical minerals. So let's talk water real briefly. Water, we know that we have been in historical droughts for the last few years. We know that we have been in really what we've identified as one of the worst droughts in 1,200 years. But it may not be the worst drought ever, and if you read the first chapter on the water section, it turns out the drought is, or it's in the land section, the drought may be something that we've seen that lasts longer and longer than we would expect given our historical past. Consumptive uses of the Colorado River, just like the Great Salt Lake's in danger when you look at who's using the water. We see that there are a number of culprits But we're all going to have to work together to solve this problem because ultimately there are 7 states that rely on that river, and it's not going to go away easily. So that's total consumptive use. Similarly, urban water uses. This is something that I have to say that I'm really proud of the state for. We have taken really what was a very challenging circumstance over the last couple of years and made huge progress, where you've had, both through voluntary and through some mandated actions, billions of billions of gallons of water conserved in the state. That's no small achievement, and I wish we could just take the victory lap and say, we're done. It turns out that that's probably not going to happen as we continue to grow. The water that we save is consumed otherwise, and so we need to start really thinking about how we grow smartly, especially when it comes to water. And that means marrying up land use plans, water plans, and things that the state is really actively engaged on. Phragmites, we have a variety of non-native invasives that are very thirsty, Phragmites being the one that I'm most concerned with around the Great Salt Lake because it consumes so much Great Salt Lake water. Again, active management is key, not only in the uplands, but also down low to where we can actually have an impact on how many Phragmites we have. And then lastly, harmful, actually 2 more, harmful algal blooms in Utah. It's an important story. We're seeing more harmful algal blooms. Interestingly, in the last few years, we've had more found in river systems than we have historically, and that's concerning, and it should be something that we just watch very carefully. And so I just leave that as something to watch. And then last, this is my favorite graph of the whole thing, because this is where it shows that small changes can make big differences. The work of Matt Yost, you'll hear from Matt in a little bit, has shown that you can actually make different adaptations on agricultural irrigation. Those differences in processes can produce the same amount of stuff, the same amount of crops, but at least 18 to 20% reduction in water use. It's those types of adaptive technologies that we're really going to have to focus on to make it through our current trends. Lastly, I'll go over air very quickly. We have seen some progress on the airspace, especially when it comes to PM 2.5. You see over time that choices, how we engage with the airspace, technologies that we use, as well as just different practices have made a big impact on bringing down the particulate PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5 microns. So, and that's especially significant when you consider the population climb that's happened at the same time period. So it's good stuff. Similarly, winter ozone days in the Uinta Basin, this is something that's inherent as part of the oil and gas production cycle in the Uinta Basin. We've seen some real progress. We're having fewer winter ozone days as technology improvements have happened, and also we've had less snowpack on the ground. And then not everything is good. We also have some real concern where the EPA recently downgraded us from marginal non-attainment to moderate non-attainment in summer-based ozone, which means that they're going to be taking a more strict view of what the state does from this point forward, especially along the Wasatch Front. And then lastly, again, on things that we're concerned about as we have a shrinking Great Salt Lake, and really other bodies of water, but especially the Great Salt Lake, we see a time frame where we have capped crust, where you have a lot of magnesium chloride that will keep that in place. But the longer that is left exposed, the more likely it is to weather. As it weathers, you have dust events that come off that lake. We are sitting really within the airshed of the lake, and that's something that we're all concerned about long term, because those gains we've made on PM 2.5 and other air quality gains could be quickly eroded by these weathering events unless we can get more water in the lake system. So that's where we are. That's a snapshot of the things. And so with that, Governor, I'm turning it over to you so you can say your words. Thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you, Brian. Madam President, thank you for welcoming us to the members of the Institute and Utah State University. It's a great day to be an Aggie, and I'm proud to be here with you today. I honestly, this presentation by Brian, I wish we had all of our legislators here. I'm grateful to the members of the legislature that have been able to join us today. But this is the purpose. This is why this institute was created, and it really could not have come at a better time. I believe in evidence-based policymaking, and I know that's kind of a novel approach. I wish that the federal government was much more interested in a little bit of that. But I'm grateful that we have a legislature that is interested in that, and I'm so grateful that we have experts here at our fingertips. I felt for years that we have these systems of excellence in our state, and you're out there toiling and doing great work, and the water's not getting to the end of the row, if I might use that metaphor. But now it is. At least we're starting that process, and this report is foundational for the decisions that we will be making. Although the report just came out, we've certainly had conversations using last year's report as I get ready to propose a budget in the next couple of weeks, and a budget that I know the legislature will take like the gospel and really implement all of it. These are the ideas, the data, the recommendations that we will be implementing and proposing to our legislative colleagues. And it really is the big picture topics in this report of land, water, and air that are critical to our quality of life. That's the piece that as I think of this, let me back up a little bit. I hear this kind of theme out there that we are raising the first generation in history whose lives will be worse than their parents, right? And I reject that completely. Maybe that's true elsewhere, but that is not true here in the state of Utah. At least not on my watch and not on your watch. And so we need this information. This is the stuff that matters to people. I was very excited to see, because we've seen some polling data as well, that people really care about this. Everywhere I go, I get asked about the Great Salt Lake. And some of you have heard me share this before, but I think it's worth repeating. I get asked a question inevitably every town hall I'm in, everywhere I go, even high school students. Every high school I've been to, and I've been to about 20 of them in the past 2 months, I get asked the question, is the Great Salt Lake going to dry up and are we all going to die? And I tell them no, it's not, and I'm actually much less worried about it now than I was last year. And I get kind of this quizzical look, how can that be? And I said, well, the reason I'm less concerned about it now than I was last year is because you're asking this question. And that tells me that something in the psyche of Utahns has changed, and again, the polling data has confirmed that. That what has changed is that people get this. There has been a paradigm shift. That it's something that not only are we concerned about, but the best part of this is there's something each of us can do about that. And we're not helpless. Every one of us can conserve water. Whether you're a farmer, whether you have a lawn, whether you just shower and eat and drink every day, there is a role for all of us to play. And unlike many of the other things that we try to do and the changes we try to make, there was actually a visual this summer that I got to see everywhere I went about people actually caring about this. There has never been a better time in the history of the state of Utah to be a terrible lawn owner. It was fun to drive around and see the yellow and brown lawns, because that told me either you're completely irresponsible, which there's some of that, but mostly it meant that people were making an active choice to not water their lawns, and you could see it. And so we had this amazing visual, and it was contagious. And in many of my neighborhoods, the other thing I started to see was people getting rid of their lawns, replacing their lawns with water-wise landscaping, spending their own money to do that. And of course, we have some incentive programs that we're increasing here in the state to do that. And so what we have now is a collective will. And that collective will matters. And so as more and more people are concerned about this, again, as more policymakers are concerned about this, and we're looking for answers, we actually have now, and I didn't bring it up with me, I should have, we actually have the answers. We have ideas, we have real opportunities for change, and it's something that we're grateful for. And we want to thank especially those, the experts who are helping us to do this, helping us to get this right. And that probably means I'm out of time, and I should, I'll hurry and wind things down right now. But I also just want to give a shout out to our agriculture partners who are here. And I want to thank, again, the wise way in which the Institute is looking at water. And I'm not avoiding air and the other issues, by the way. Please don't, just because I'm not focusing on those. And by the way, especially the piece on the way that we are preparing and treating our lands to fight catastrophic wildfires. I can't emphasize that enough. By the way, if you care about air quality, interesting reports came out, maybe some of you saw this a few weeks ago, that the catastrophic wildfires over the last couple of years in California alone have undone everything that they have accomplished over the past 30, 40 years in air quality reductions, emission reductions, just by the wildfires. And by the way, they ruined our air too. Right? So all of the savings, all of the Clean Air Act stuff, all of the billions of dollars that we've spent are gone like that because of these wildfires, because we haven't done the work of taking care of our forests. We know how to do this. We know how to do it right here in Utah, and we are doing it. And our federal partners are finally starting to catch the vision and understand that mechanical treatments, prescribed burns, we can do this at the right time in the right places and prevent this. And it helps everything else. All of this comes together. Not just our air, again, not just the wildfires, but it makes our water cleaner. We've seen this in areas where we have treated, the water runs cleaner, there's more of it. We have healthier wildlife. It really is more of a utopian concept, but we just have to be willing to put in the work, and we're willing to do that here. But I just have to say that this collective change that we're doing and our agriculture friends, I keep hearing that we need to get rid of all of our farmers, and then everything would be fine. We would have plenty of water if we just got rid of all of our farmers, that damn alfalfa. If we could just do that, everything would be perfect. And I'm here to tell you, I say this everywhere I go, that is my least concern. My biggest concern is the graph that you saw, that we are losing farmland. That is the thing that everyone should be worried about. Not just for the way that we produce our food. I don't know where people think our food comes from, but it's really important you understand that you can't produce food without water. And I think we like food. I like food. I don't know. There are some people that maybe don't, but I think food's really great, and I think we should produce more of it, not less of it here in the state of Utah. If we learned anything through the pandemic, it's that we can't always rely on supply chains. We have to be able to produce some of this stuff here. And if you care about open space, if you care about these water systems that we have created, where does this stuff come from? It comes from our agriculture community. It's not just a lifestyle, these fat cat farmers out there who are just making billions of dollars and making it worse for everyone out there. Sorry, that's my sarcasm voice. I hope you're all catching it, but just in case some of you aren't. It's the loss of farmland that is most concerning to me. We can grow these crops with less water. We know that. We just have to make sure that we have the resources available to our farmers. Again, I want to thank the legislature for putting more into ag optimization. You will see another proposal from me next week asking for even more money for ag optimization. We know how to do this, and again, we have the data. Thanks to this institute, thanks to Utah State University, we can do this better, and we're committed to doing it better the right way. We can continue to grow as a state. We can continue to improve the lifestyle, the quality of life here in the state. We can make sure that the next generation is better off than this generation. We just have to be smart about it. And now we're smart about it because of the Institute, because of this report and your continued work. So thank you for making this happen. We're very proud to be your partners. We look forward to picking up that red phone and making those phone calls a little more often than we have in the past. And in so doing, making sure that our state is a better place. God bless you and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Please join me again in thanking the governor. Thank you so much for being here. Governor, I know that you're on an incredibly tight time frame and that you have to leave. But we just want to say thank you for being here, and you're excused to go when you have to. No, you're good.
Out right now.
Okay, thank you. And while we're doing that, I'm going to welcome up our panel. We have a panel of 5 of the authors that have worked on this report. And I'm going to bring up Joanna Anderwada, Kelly Cope, Randy Martin, Larissa Yoakum, and Matt Yost. And we're also going to watch a video on how Utah State is working on Great Salt Lake issues. So, roll video, and panel, come on up.
People's views on the Great Salt Lake are changing. It's an issue that rises above partisan politics. For a long time, the mantra in Utah was water that reaches the Great Salt Lake is wasted. And I think people are realizing what is at stake if the lake desiccates and dries up.
Over the last year, I've had the opportunity to work with a number of canal companies and individual water users, and there's a lot of opportunity to change how we think about water and how we use water. And that has shaped how I think through my research problems and my research questions. And I think that that's probably one of our biggest needs, is to close the gap between what we do as research and how we actually manage our water.
Using automation for surface irrigation can really increase efficiency. Taking water and piping it, putting it underground instead of in an open ditch, and then putting automated valves on those pipes so that a farmer can control their water use from their phone and turn it on and off. This method we're seeing is reducing water use by about half. I definitely think it's a big part of the solution. We've really got to be careful that we maintain as much agriculture and food production as we can here in our state, while still trying to meet the goals of sustaining the lake.
The most foundational element is the health of the ecosystem. A healthy brine shrimp industry, habitat for birds, economic benefits that come to the state from recreation and tourism. The wetlands that surround the lake are extremely important. The Great Salt Lake reaching historic lows the past 2 years has created greater public visibility to the threats that the lake is facing, and has mobilized, in essence, a collective call to action on behalf of the lake.
Thanks to Aaron who put that together for us, and thanks to those of the panel that were already on the screen. It's my pleasure to welcome really a panel of experts, and I'm going to give you their bios just so you don't have to take my word for it, but really what they do. So to my left I have Joanna Anderwada. She is a professor of natural resource policy and social science in the Department of Environment and Society at Utah State. She's director of the National Environmental Policy Graduate Certificate Program and a faculty researcher with the USU Center for Water Efficient Landscaping. So welcome, Joanna. Kelly Cope. Kelly is her research efforts are focused on landscape water conservation and sustainable turfgrass management. She serves on the board of directors of USU's Center for Water Efficient Landscaping and is a board member and past president of the Utah Water Conservation Forum. She works directly with many federal, state, municipal agencies that are working toward achieving water use efficiency in the state of Utah and the Intermountain West and beyond. Randy Martin. Dr. Martin is the research associate professor of environmental engineering at Utah State University with a joint appointment at the Utah Water Research Laboratory. He has been at USU since the summer of 2000, combining research, teaching, and outreach duties associated with all things air quality. He's also an associate director of the Utah Climate Center. And last but not least, he serves on the State of Utah's Air Quality Board since 2017, right? And I think you're the chair of that.
Chair for now, yeah.
Yeah, for now, right. It sounds very dire. And then we have Larissa Yoakum. Larissa is associate professor in the Quinney College of Natural Resources. In the Department of Wildland Resources, Dr. Yoakum's research focuses on interactions between forests and other ecosystems, fire, climate, and people over space and time, using dendrochronology methods, plot data, and large spatial data sets. And you can tell just by that she's smarter than I am. Dr. Yoakum is one of the very few researchers in the state that's dedicated solely to wildfire ecology, and we're so happy to have her here. Thank you. And last but not least, Matt Yost. Matt is an associate professor of plants, soil, and climate in the College of Agriculture and Applied Sciences. He's also an agriclimate extension specialist and director of USU Crops. He's a native of southern Idaho, where he was raised on a dairy farm, so he really gets this whole ag thing. And his research focuses on water optimization, nitrogen management, precise agriculture, or precision agriculture, and soil conservation. And I'll brag on Matt just a minute. Not the rest of you deserve bragging too, definitely, but Matt is quoted and cited more than anybody I know personally right now as part of really important stuff. So thanks for being here. So I have a series of questions. I hope to have 2 mics, but I only see one here. Is there a second one somewhere? Well, we'll figure it out. Nonetheless, Joanna Enterwater, let's go to you first. It seems like we're seeing unprecedented attention to the Great Salt Lake. You've studied this issue for some time. And I gotta be honest, it's often a bleak conversation. Is there anything you're seeing that's giving you hope currently?
Yes, there are 2 things that I wanted to mention that I think give me hope. The first is the legislative action of the last several years. We see a lot being done by the legislature to add some flexibility to prior appropriation water law, to move water around better, and to do different things with it. But I particularly want to point out House Bill 410 and the creation of the Great Salt Lake Ecosystem Enhancement Program that's creating a trust for Great Salt Lake. And so I think that's one source of encouragement. The other is we're conducting a survey across the state of Utah about the Great Salt Lake. And there are 2 versions of that survey. One is a very carefully selected random sample from households in every county of the state. The other is an open public survey that any of you can participate in. It's the same survey, but they're being kept separate. And the responses that we're seeing it's specifically focused on strategies people are willing to support individually in their communities at the state level for the Great Salt Lake. And the responses are showing a great willingness for people to do a number of different things, including invest their own financial resources in helping to secure the future of the Great Salt Lake. So I'll have some flyers at the back and a QR code, and hopefully some of you would participate in that. But those are encouraging to me.
We'll take the shameless plug as well. That's good. I would encourage you all to engage in the survey because it actually is important. Let's go to Larissa. Larissa, Utah's a public land state. One of the major concerns that we hear about is the risk of catastrophic wildfires. The governor talked about that just a minute ago. You hear that both from the National Forest and Bureau of Land Management. So let me ask you this. We talked about it kind of around, but what are the management actions that we should be taking to avoid catastrophic wildfire? What do you think?
Right, so a lot of people are worried about catastrophic wildfire. I think the place to start is to recognize that we don't have the choice of no fire in Utah, or really anywhere in the West. Our landscapes are built to burn. They've burned as long as we've had vegetation on Earth. So we've had this very artificial and unnaturally low period of fire when we built all of our infrastructure over the past century, where we got used to very little fire. But that lull is starting to end, and we've seen that in most places. We're starting to see more fire, and that's going to continue to increase, and so we don't have that choice. No fire is not a reasonable or rational choice, and so I think what we can have a little bit of control over is how the fire burns, what type of fire, and when. And the way that we have control is to modify the fuels, which is the vegetation out on our landscapes. So we have lots of tools for modifying fuels. Those include mechanical treatments like chainsaws, heavy equipment, logging where it's appropriate. And then we also have fire itself as a tool. So prescribed fire and managed wildfire. If we have fires that start in more moderate conditions, that can be the best way to treat fuels on a pretty big scale. I think just recognizing that doing nothing is also a choice is important, because then what we're opting for is fire under the most extreme conditions when they're literally unstoppable.
Thank you so much. let's go to Kelly. Kelly, water conservation has become an increasingly urgent call in the state. I think we've mentioned that from, I guess, multiple points of view today. So let me ask you this, what are you seeing that works on the conservation front?
Well, I agree with you when you were speaking earlier. We've seen some amazing progress this year, billions of gallons saved in the municipal sector. And I think I'm very proud of that savings. I think that USU has played a critical role in that savings. And our newer efforts are really focused on growth and how we grow in the municipal and urban sector in a way that does not exceed our available water supply. And so USU is involved in a partnership with the Division of Water Resources and others, presenting a series of workshops that involve communities in the state and counties in the state, bringing land use and water planners together, sometimes for the very first time, even within the same city, to facilitate growth in a way that makes sense, to communicate with one another, to develop ordinances that allow that growth, that support our quality of life. I hear that term a lot. I couldn't agree more with you, with the governor. I think we're all in favor of supporting and maintaining our quality of life. And so this effort, this Growing Water Smart effort, is a way for us to continue to enhance the water conservation that we're seeing in the municipal sector. And we have communities in the state that are setting fantastic examples. They're taking a multifaceted approach to water conservation, which is what we absolutely have to do. We will not get there simply by removing lawn. We will not get there simply by taking any number of other practices. It has to be a series of things, a multifaceted approach. But these new efforts that we're undertaking have been proven to be successful in other places. Utah is embracing those efforts and continuing with the efforts we have already undertaken that have been very successful. So I am very optimistic about our future in terms of urban water conservation. Having said that, the growth is unprecedented. And so we do have to be very careful and very intentional in that growth. But I see more and more interest in that effort, so I'm very encouraged.
Thank you so much. Randy, air quality remains at the top of mind for many of us. I know that we've talked about a few things that we're seeing on the air quality front, but it seems like a bit of a mixed bag, that some good, some bad. Let me ask you this, how do you think we're really doing? Where are we seeing successes, and where do we still need to make progress?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. It is kind of a mixed bag. But in general, I would say that it's a positive more than a negative. And as Kelly indicated too, it was unprecedented growth in the state of Utah, particularly in the Northern Wasatch Front, impacts what we're going forward as far as our policies and our pollution levels. I think our two biggest issues have been and will remain to be ozone and PM2.5. We have had a lot of success with PM2.5 across the state. However, if you notice on that slide that you showed, the last couple of years it's actually trending back up. Not quite over the standard except for a couple of locations, but it is trending back up. So we've got to be aware that we're not there yet, and we won't be for 10 or 20 years, according to what the regulations say as far as what you have to keep in track of. So we're close on the PM2.5. Just got to be careful where we're going. Ozone's another issue. We've got two ozone issues. The Utah, or the Uinta Basin wintertime ozone issue, primarily associated with the oil and gas industry out there, but much like around here, they're just a big basin. In the wintertime, they get inverted like we do, and if there happens to be snow on the ground or you get a lot of sunlight reflected back, photochemistry goes crazy. The last few years, there hasn't been much snow out there. The oil and gas industry has pulled back somewhat. But now the oil and gas industry is drilling more, and we got snow. So I don't know what this winter's gonna look like. I say we're cautious out there. In the Wasatch Front, the summertime ozone issue, that's another big issue. Right now, as you mentioned, we've just recently been bumped up a category. We are probably going to get bumped up another category next year. The data right now suggests that there's almost no way we're not going to be. And so we have to start looking for more and more controls, and to give the Division of Air Quality a lot of credit, they're being creative about what they can do. The report talks about lawn garden care instruments, and that is an area that we can make progress in. as well as other regulatory proposals. And a lot of those are based on research. And so I think it's important to keep that in mind, that a lot of successes we've had have come out of what the researchers across the state have found.
Thanks, appreciate it. Matt? Let me ask you a question. I get asked all the time, similar to what the governor was mentioning on, the problem's ag, right? We just need to make sure that we get in front of ag and change that. How do we work with ag so there's not such a target on their back? What does your research tell us?
Thanks, Brian. Before I mention what we need to do more, I want to acknowledge all that has happened. And I think as I look around this room, I see many that I sit at tables with for several years, working to engage, involve the agriculture community in policies, in programs and efforts to improve that industry. And so thank you. Much is being done. As we look forward, I would suggest agriculture needs to be a target. Wait, don't hear me out.
You had Jay coming off his chair, so.
It needs to be a target, but not in the way that most of us might think, that, hey, it uses a lot of water, we need to take it and use it for other purposes. But it needs to be a target because it is such an important, critical, crucial industry to our state. And we need to continue to do all that we can to protect it and enhance it and optimize its water use. Yes, certainly. Agriculture has to be a part of the solution. It has, and it will need to continue to be a big part of our land, water, and air issues going forward. And so it needs to be a target, but maybe in a different way. And we've got to do all that we can to continue to involve farmers, agriculture, the industry in all of the tables that we sit at and all of the decisions that we make going forward.
Matt, can you tell us a little bit more specifically about your research, about what you're finding and what works?
Sure. So myself and a long list of collaborators, some in this room, work each year on farms across Utah to try to investigate ways that we can optimize water use in agriculture. And we're finding ways that we can do that, several different ways, and how we irrigate, the types of systems we use, the management of that irrigation, the crop types, the crop management, the soil management. There are lots of options, and a lot of those options work. They help optimize water use. In some cases, we're finding we can use 15, 20, 25% less water. Some of those come at an inexpensive cost, and some come at a very expensive cost. Some that farmers just can't bear. And so we know some of these work, and it's important to keep testing them, evaluating them. We know some things. There's still a lot we don't know about the best ways to optimize water use, but we do know some ways that are working, and so continuing to promote and enhance those ways will be important going forward. And not just the financial assistance, but also the technical and the education assistance will be critical.
Awesome. We're running out of time, so I'm going to ask rapid fire. And I'm going to start with Matt, actually, again, so that we can pass the...
He's picking up.
I am, yeah. So what's the biggest land, water, or air issue facing the state currently? Rapid fire.
All of the above. There's lots, but water, we saw it was the top of the list for concerns, and I think it's the top concern, and it affects almost everything else that we talked about today.
Okay, Randy.
Well, I sort of have my bias towards air, but yeah, I think our biggest threat, if you will, is growth. And how do we manage that in all these sectors, land, water, and air?
Kelly.
I'm going to go with water. I have to go with water, but if I can drill just a tiny bit deeper, I would say it's public opinion, it's public will. I was really pleased to hear the governor's comments about his perspective on the will of the public and a growing understanding of where we are in terms of water issues. And I guess if I have to directly answer that question, I'm going to say the Great Salt Lake because of how water is involved there as well. But I think that's the highest visibility resource we're dealing with.
Thanks. Larissa.
I agree with all these panelists as well, but just to put in a plug for fire, that also affects air quality and water. You talked about the reservoirs that fire puts at risk. So I think we've been lucky in Utah so far. We haven't had the catastrophic wildfires that many of our neighboring states have, but I think it's a matter of time.
Joanna.
The Great Salt Lake, I think, is the high visibility issue because it really illustrates for all of us the need to integrate perspectives on land, water, and air and how those work together, and it's a great integrative issue. But it's also important because the growth that we're experiencing will primarily be in the Great Salt Lake watershed. The growth is anticipated to occur on the Wasatch Front, where it's already concentrated, and that's right on the shores of the Great Salt Lake. There's no other saline lake in the world with a large metropolitan area as close to it as here. And so the potential consequences of the struggle over water between keeping a healthy ecosystem and healthy nearby communities, those go hand in hand. So I put that issue at the top.
Excellent. So last question. If you could have each Utahn do one thing to make a difference, what would that one thing be?
Never utter or think that water that reaches the Great Salt Lake is wasted. And that has been a mantra. We need to change that.
Okay. Larissa.
I think water conservation at a household level.
Okay.
I would just like people to irrigate their lawns appropriately.
Okay, you can help inform us what appropriately is. Great.
I would just like people to be open-minded and be willing to learn maybe a little bit outside their comfort box in all these areas.
Matt.
I would say explore the whole story and all of the evidence that surrounds these issues and not jump to simple, inaccurate conclusions.
Excellent. Thank you all for your willingness to be up here. Thank you so much for being also willing to be authors. Please join me in saying thanks to these. And that brings us nearly to the end. But I can't close without saying again, thank you, thank you, thank you to all those who have participated in this effort. Whether it's through funding, or whether it's through the active research, or whether it's through active listening. We are all part of the solution here. And so thank you so much to the President for her vision, and thank you so much for you all dedicating enough time to come and learn about these important issues. I am an optimist. We can make a real difference in the world around us. I think that those choices that we make on a day-to-day basis can help solve some of the crises that we face on the daily. And ultimately, by making those right choices, I think that we can maintain that quality of life. Thank you again so much for your willingness to join us in this effort. Please stay around. We have reports at the back, as well as you can research or get them online at ILWA/ or USU. I'm going to read it. ILWA.usu. Yeah, it's ILWA.usu.edu. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, we'll figure it out. And also we have refreshments. Please stay around and welcome us. Thank you so much.